Duopoly is a very fascinating market form, very different from perfect market and monopoly market. So in this presentation, I shall look into non-collusive oligopoly, and in this oligopoly model, we shall examine Cournot's duopoly model. One of the big questions that come in is, how do firms behave when they are just few in number? So we understand that firms are independent, that firms can take decisions on their own regarding price and output. But does this kind of decision making change when firms are few in number? Do they become interdependent in taking decisions? Does the decision of one firm affect the decision making of the other firm in terms of price, product, and output? How do firms behave in these conditions? And that is what makes oligopoly very different. We also understand that there are few firms, and these firms are strategically connected with each other, and therefore the decision making of one firm influences the decision making of other firm. And firms have different objectives. Because firms have different objectives, it becomes all the more difficult to create any one kind of model to answer the decision making processes of firms. We also understand that there are no unique or one general solution for firms when they are just few in number. And there are different behavioral models, and each model has got a different solution. So, economists all along have analyzed this particular subject in multiple ways, and therefore, we have multiple answers or multiple models to explain this behavior of firms when they are just few in number. Let's look at this particular structure of models, which are called the collusive, non-collusive, classical models. Now they are classical models because they appear to be one set which all where the earliest explanation of the behavior of firms when they are few in numbers. They are non-collusive because we also have another set of understanding about firms' behavior when firms collude with each other. That's another series of models there. And we call them as duopoly model. There are no oligopoly models as such. We have what is called duopoly model, and the later part of it we can see how it can be extended to understand oligopoly behavior. So when we're talking about duopoly model, we start with the word duopoly. Duopoly is a situation when there are only two sellers. So duo and poly, two sellers. So Cournot is the first writer on duopoly, and his writing appeared in 1938, where he put it as the output as the variable. And of course, I will explain more of Cournot a little while later. Then this was explained by F.Y. Edgeworth in 1887 by using contract curves. And you have the Bertrand model, which explains the Cournot model. As a critique of Cournot model, he changes the price in this particular model. Then we have the Chamberlain's model, which was in 1933, which is also called as a small group model. Then we have the Stackelberg solution, which is 1939, which uses indifference curve and isoprofit curves to explain duopoly behavior. The Sweezy model or the kinked demand curve, which is 1939, which shows the peculiar characteristic of the demand curve of the model relating to few firms. But all of these models have done one thing, and that is they have kept the original structure of Cournot model intact, and they have changed parts of it by changing the assumptions, or they have tried it with different, or they have modified it to suit the point they were trying to prove. So essentially, Cournot model is important to study when we study oligopoly, and with that, all other models would follow suit. Now let's look at Cournot's model, which was written in 1938 in French. Of course, for a very long time, it was not translated into English until in 1897. And the title of the book was Researches on the Mathematical Principles of the Theory of Wealth. It is in this book that he writes that political economy way too abstract and too much of theories, and therefore there was a need of converting these ideas into using statistics and mathematics, so that it would gain a positive approach to the subject or the discipline under study. That is how he is known as a mathematical economist of the first order, because he is the first person who writes so much on mathematics of economics. Then the book was actually left unattended for about 40 years or so, and only after 40 years we find that Gibbons, Walras, and Bocardo takes up the book and gives importance to the book. The Cournot model is interestingly not available in any one single chapter of his book. The book is available online. You would like to read them, you could see they are those classics that are available, and they have a wealth of information on demand, on markets, on wealth, and a series of subjects. So there are 3 chapters in that book. The first one is the 6th chapter on monopoly. He writes a whole chapter on monopoly. There he uses the example of one mineral spring. Then he has chapter 7, which talks about competitions of producers. And the 9th chapter is a mutual relationship of producers. So he recognized that producers are related to each other. There is a relationship among the producers. So these are the 3 chapters which you will arrive at the Cournot model, which was later, of course, coherently put by later economists. And Marshall wrote about Cournot. Cournot's genius was such that whoever passes through his hands will have plenty of work to do ahead. And it really did, because what Cournot wrote in his book led to so many writings that had to be done later, and those developed into a whole section in microeconomics called the oligopoly model. And also it became a separate subject by industrial organization or industrial economics later. And for management students, it becomes the basis for strategic thinking and strategy formulation. The entire study of strategy thinking, game policies, and prisoner's dilemma, and all of that have origins in Cournot's model. So let us see Cournot's model. Cournot has got several assumptions made. So some of the original assumptions that Cournot made are presented here for you. And he says that there are just 2 firms, and these 2 firms are independent firms, and these 2 independent firms have been bestowed with 2 hot water springs, mineral springs. So these mineral springs are owned by 2 firms individually, and they produce identical products or undifferentiated. He uses the word undifferentiated and he uses identical products. So these identical products, of course, water, and therefore undifferentiated or identical products. Then we talk about there are plenty of buyers for the product, and the production happens at 0 cost, and the firms face a downward sloping demand curve, and both know the size of the market. So there is imperfect knowledge about the market behavior of both the firms. So firm A does not know what firm B is going to do, and firm B does not know what firm A is going to do, except that they behave independently and simultaneously, hoping that the other one would do as he expects the other firm to do. Then each firm sells at a prevailing price in the market. And the assumption is that the competitor will not change the size of the output. Both firms assume that the other firm will not change the size of the output. Both firms act rationally, and both firms are acting for maximizing their profits. Now, let's take firm A now. Firm A decides to begin production first. So what does he do? He estimates the market, and he decides that he will produce half the market, where his marginal cost is interacting with the marginal revenue curve. So half of the firm, wherever MC is equal to MR, he decides the output, and this output is for profit maximization of the firm. We can explain this with the help of a simple diagram. Yeah, so the red line is for firm A. Now firm A's MR curve is MRA and DB is the demand curve. So output is decided at OA and the price is AS or OK. So this OA is exactly half of the market of OB. You can see that half of the market of OB, zero cost. So output is fixed at MC equal to MR at OA. And since it is zero cost, the entire revenue for the firm is firm's profit, which is OKSA. Firm B. Now, what does firm B do? Firm B discovers that firm A has already taken half of the market. So, firm B does not venture into that half of the market which is already being produced by firm A. So, the leftover of the market, the firm B decides to produce. The leftover market is AB and firm B decides to produce on AB of the market. So firm B decides to produce AB of the market, and again he will have to decide what is the quantity which will be fixed on MC equal to MR. So when he fixes his output MC is equal to MR, we will find that there he produces half of the remaining market and another half of the market remains unattended or unsupplied. Let's look at the diagram for firm B. Now firm B has to see his MR curve, that is MRB is MR curve for firm B. The demand curve for firm B is SB, and the output that the firm will decide is AH. Now I have removed firm A's part of from the figure just for the sake of convenience. I am left with only firm B's part of the figure. So for firm B, what is available is SAB is what is available for firm B. Of this SAB, the MR curve touches MC curve at point H, and therefore the firm decides to produce AH of the portion AB, and at price is HQ or price at OF. So firm B gets a profit of AGHQ. Firm B gets a profit of AGHQ. So this AGHQ is again half of the market of AB, of which QHB is left unsupplied by firm B. Now, when both the firms are together, this is how the diagram will look like. So when the total market is OB, of which firm A has sold OA, produced OA, and his profits have come down to the red shaded area, and firm B has entered, and therefore since the output has increased, the price has come down from OK to OF, and B gets a profit of AGJH. So this is the condition when both the firms have begun producing. One is producing half and the other producing half of the leftover half. There is something here, a new concept called residual demand. What is residual demand? It is that portion what is left behind by first firm after the second firm has already sold its output. That means the firm A is also left with something that B has not supplied. So that portion which is not supplied by B is now available for A to participate in that market. Now we can explain this half and quarter story with the help of a numerical table here. It makes it much easier to understand what is this half and this quarter. Let's say that the total market is for 100. When the total market is for 100, what did we find? That A produces half of the market, which is 50. Now what is left over? The other 50 is available for firm B. So what firm B does now is firm B will choose to produce, according to the diagram, the firm B will choose to produce half of that 50, which is 25. So one is 50 and the other produces 25. Now in the second period, what does firm A do? Firm A now finds a residual market that is available is 75, because the 50 that he was already producing and the 25 that is remaining after B has already decided to produce 25. So 50 plus 25 makes it 75, and he decides to produce only half of it. So 75 of half of 75 makes it into 37.5. Now when 37.5 has been taken over by firm A, what is left for firm B? So now the firm B discovers out of 100 he has to minus 37.5, which is being produced by firm A. Now he is left with 62.5. Instead of 50 that he was left earlier, he now finds himself with 62.5. So this residual demand of 62.5 divided by 2, he is now able to produce 31.25. And then the third stage, you'll find just the red arrow that I showed this way. You can put the red arrow again here. You will find that firm A's residual demand is currently 100 minus 31.25, because 31.25 has been produced by B, and firm A is now left with 75 by 2, which is 34.38. So 34.38, yes. And then the firm B, what does the firm B do? Firm B is now left with 100 minus 34.38, that is 65.62, and 65.62 divided by 2 again, half that. He has also decided to produce half of it, and he's left with 32.81. That fourth period, what is happening? Again 100 minus 32.81. Why? 100 was a total amount, and 32.8 is what is produced by firm B. What is left over is 67.19, and 67.19 divided by 2 is 33.59, whereas for firm B, it is the residual demand will show 100 minus 33.59, which is 66.41 divided by 2, because he's also producing only half of it. So 66.41 divided by 2 is equal to 33.20. So numerically, we are able to show that there is an interesting thing that you can observe numerically. Firm A's output is constantly decreasing. It was 50, it reduced to 37.5, it reduced to 34.38, and finally it has settled to 33.59. Whereas numerically for firm B, we find from 25 it has increased to 31.25, has increased to 32.81, and has increased to 33.20. So how this has taken place? It is only by using the concept of residual demand we could explain this. And now you see what is the total output. How can we divide this total output between the three elements of firm A, firm B, and whether there will remain an unsold market. Now, as of now, there will be an unsold market. Firm A produces 33.59, firm B will produce 33.20, and there is a total of 66.79. So 33.21 of the market still remains unsold. And therefore, we conclude that Cournot's equilibrium is attained. If this is the way they go, Cournot says that they will attain an equilibrium, and both the firms will provide 1/3 of the market each, and another 1/3 of the market will remain unsold. So that is how Cournot tries to arrive at the equilibrium. Now, there is something interesting that happens when the firms are doing it this way. You can also look at it by the next table. This is by factorizing it: half of the half market, quarter of the half, and of the quarter market, quarter of the market available, and you factorize it further. You will again find you will have to do more periods, and then you will come to the same conclusion that you are left with 1/3, 1/3, and 1/3 of the market. Now, we can also show this and in one diagram what happens to these two firms, their profits, their prices, and their output when this kind of an adjustment is seen done by the firm, though not by negotiation, but independently and simultaneously. Firm seems to be appearing to do this, and this is what the outcomes seem to be showing. So the original price was okay for firm A, and the price for firm B was OF. Now, when firm B enters the market, the output obviously increases. When the output increases, the price fell from the monopoly price OK to the competitive price at OF. Now, after price falling to OF and output expanding, we also find the adjustment happening in the output, and therefore we find that the prices go up to OP2. When the price has gone up to OP2, it appears that the firms are settled with the quantity that they are selling. Well, firm A sells OM of output, firm B produces MN of output, and what is interesting to observe here is, like the original position, firms have come to the original position except that they have made changes in the output, because we find that the unsold output is N. Yes, NH remains the unsold output. And there is another thing that you can see there, that the profit of firm B has reduced from its original to OP2KM, and the profit has been for firm B is MKLN. The blue shaded area is for firm B. The horizontal black lines are those part of the market which remain unsold. So we get that situation where the prices are prices at P2, which is lower than the monopoly price but higher than the competitive price, and appears to be acceptable both to firm A and firm B. Now, what are the price outcomes here? So market demands will depend upon the market price will depend upon the output, and each firm supplies just one third of the market. And we also find that that seems to be a stable equilibrium in the given condition. And final price is higher than the competitive price, lower than the monopoly price. Now, any model that we study, it is also important for us to critically examine that model, because when we examine a theory critically, we not only develop the model, we not only develop this skill of critical thinking in understanding theories, we also see that in history, whenever these criticisms are presented, they have always resulted in new theories or new models coming up. And therefore, these criticisms of Cournot model are very important to understand, because this has led to several other models coming up later. The first and the foremost criticism is that it's too simple, too naive to say that firms do not understand what the other firm is doing, and they will continue to make the mistake of producing half and leaving out a part of the market unattended and so on. And these calculations firms do make calculation based on competitive behaviors, but here it is assumed to be very simple. Firms are very simple. Then the second thing is, Cournot himself does not explain how the price adjustments take place. Though I drew a diagram to show you how price adjustment has taken place, Cournot model itself does not explain that. So price adjustments have taken place from the top, from the competitive market to the lower market, and from the competitive market to the higher market, which is better off than the competitive price. And then the assumption of costless production is also too simple. Of course, we make assumptions because it allows us to abstract the reality and make theories more understandable, more analytical in nature. And the theory also does not assume that any firm is likely to enter this competition of two firms. So they are just the theory just closes off entry of firms, and price setting is not explained. Now, what is possible in the real world? This theory, whether it can be applied to the real world, yes, these are situations that appear in the real world. So if we know the naivety or the simpleness of the model of Cournot, we can now understand what might happen in a model of this kind in real world. If firms were placing a situation of this kind, probably the firms may agree on price, or maybe on output, or maybe on the types of products that they are going to sell. So firms may possibly divide the total market between the two of them. Firm may assign quotas to two of them by negotiating. The firm may merge. It is possible that the firm may even merge The two firms need not work as two independent entities. They may even merge and they might become a monopoly, and they will enjoy larger profit as one firm rather than as two firms sharing the profit. It could also be that they may want to differentiate the products and show that the products are no longer identical, they are differentiated products. So this is also quite possible. It is also possible that one might fix the price and the other might accept the price. There could be a price leader that might emerge from this. This leads to those leadership theories that come in later in oligopoly market. So another criticism we say about Cournot is, once the output is decided, it is very difficult for firms to keep changing output because of the fixed cost that is involved. Nevertheless, this is an assumption made for the sake of convenience. And finally, what is the relevance of this particular duopoly model of Cournot? Cournot, though he explained just two firms, the ideas that emerge from these two firms have been used to understand when more than two firms exist in the market, when there are just few firms in the market, how this theory can explain that. In fact, the study of industrial economics or industrial organization, a large part of the study of industrial economics or industrial organization originates from the study of oligopoly market behavior. Many of the theories and many of the developments that you see, acquisitions and mergers and integration, all of them can be traced back to the study of the duopoly markets and their behavior. For a student of management sciences, this allows you to study strategic thinking, because all your strategic thinking theories that you study, the planning that you study, it is always based on the study of oligopoly markets. How will that firm behave if this firm does this? So you are constantly comparing the behavior of two firms, which is the origin is that in the duopoly model of Cournot. So Cournot's model has a very, very special place in the study of the oligopoly market. Though it is only a study of duopoly, yet it gives us all a window to study the behavior of firms when they participate in the oligopoly market. And let me just conclude with the writings of Fisher. Fisher says more of the mathematical part of Fisher and of Cournot, and he says that any student who is interested in the mathematics of economics must take Cournot as the writer to study mathematics in economics, and he has had a very powerful influence on economic thinking for a very long time. Many things that have been done much later has been dependent on Augustin Cournot and his writing, especially for mathematical economics and the study of oligopoly. Thank you. Please subscribe to this channel and share it with your friend. I shall be following it with the other models of oligopoly or duopoly. Thank you.